Launching and running a business isn't easy. I've been there and I get it. With the right guidance, you can avoid common pitfalls and build something incredible. I'm Amy Davies, a 3-time business owner, and I'm your new business big sister. Joel, how are you?
Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Just getting warmed up.
You're rehearsing. You were supposed to do that before we started.
Oh. I didn't realize we're on. Okay. Oh.
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are, yeah.
Lights, camera, action.
Professional face.
Okay, well, I'm super excited for today's topic. It sounds boring, but we're going to make it really fun and exciting. And I hope that people listen to it and they leave and they feel like empowered to do things their own way and a little bit differently. What do you say?
Yeah. Oh, Amy, I'm so glad. Big sister. I'm so glad that you are bringing this up, because I think this is where people get stuck, is talking about themselves and how do they do that. And I'm looking forward to this discussion and to your. You have so much experience because you've had to pitch so many different companies. Yes. and pitch yourself and
yes.
pitch your brand and so I'm looking forward to sharing your what you see has worked and what hasn't worked.
Well, I should add that today we are talking about throwing away the elevator pitch and developing what we're calling your passion pitch. Something to get people interested and inspired by you and want to continue that conversation. And Joel, I had the pleasure of sitting in an audience recently where you were giving a talk on a similar subject. So I really do want us to touch on that today, because sure. it was a light bulb went off about doing this episode and making sure that we were doing this episode together, because you had such great wisdom to share. And I think it will make a real difference to our listeners.
Terrific. Look forward to it.
Okay, so let's start by talking about what an elevator pitch is. I think most people know it, but I want to take you through it. And Joel, you and I are going to do our elevator pitches and see if we can bore our audience to death.
All right, very good.
But stick with us, folks, because it gets a lot more exciting.
Yeah.
So an elevator pitch is essentially broken down into anywhere from 3 to 5 parts, right? You have your introduction. So for me, it would be, hi, I'm Amy Davies, the CEO of First 30. Oh, and the host of your new business, Big Sister. But that might be a little too interesting. That's the more fun part, right?
True,
so forget that
true.
for now. We'll stick to CEO of First 30.
Yeah.
And then you want to move along to your problem statement. And for First 30 and for me, I would say something like, in today's rapidly changing job market, many organizations face the challenge of supporting employees during transitions, specifically layoffs, right? So now we want to talk about our solution. So what is the gap that your company fills? At First 30, we specialize in outplacement and career transition services designed to help individuals navigate these critical phases with confidence. It's not terrible in the sense that it's informative.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to put it all together. Sorry, Joel, you go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. I'm just nodding my head and I'm verbalizing as I'm nodding my head. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're still with me, right? And then, this one I hate. We're going to do a whole episode on your unique value proposition. We're in the same way we're going to spin the elevator speech, we're going to spin this UVP as well. But for purposes of today, it's our comprehensive programs provide personal coaching, access to resources, and a dedicated career transition portal, ensuring that every participant can find their next meaningful opportunity quickly. Again, it's not bad. It might be great for a website. No problem. And then you talk about your benefit, right? By partnering with us, organizations not only demonstrate their commitment to their employees, but also facilitate smoother transitions that ultimately benefit their reputation and bottom line. And then your call to action. We're going to talk a lot about calls to action going forward, not specifically related to your initial conversation with a stranger, but your call to action is like, if you have in mind, what do you want that person to do? So this happens a lot if you're sending out an email, right? If you're sending out one of those, I'm gonna say spammy, but it's not always spammy. There's people that are companies like First 30, I would argue, that are really good at sending out these emails. But you should have in mind when you're putting any content together, whether it's what you're doing when you're meeting people at a conference or whether it's you sending out an email, what action do you want them to take from that? And that's your call to action. You're not telling them what your call to action is, but you should have some understanding yourself of, okay, what do I want to happen next here? So the call to action in this case, and you're very much encouraged to get people to engage with you somehow when people are positioning it as an elevator pitch. So I'd love to discuss how First 30 can help your organization support employees during layoffs and career shifts. Okay? So I'm going to put this all together, Joel, and I don't know if you want to do the same thing for your business. I'm sure we'd love to hear it, but here is mine. Yeah. And if you have I don't know if you have your paragraph ready to go or not, but mine is, hi, I'm Amy Davies, the CEO of First 30. In today's rapidly changing job market, many organizations face the challenge of supporting employees during transitions. At First 30, we specialize in outplacement and career transition services designed to help individuals navigate these critical phases with confidence. Our comprehensive programs provide personalized coaching, access to resources, and a dedicated career transition portal, ensuring that every participant can find their next meaningful opportunity quickly. By partnering with us, organizations not only demonstrate their commitment to employees, but also facilitate smoother transitions that ultimately benefit their reputation and bottom line. I'd love to discuss how First 30 can help your organization support employees during layoffs and career shifts. Whew, Joel?
Yeah.
How on earth? Okay. Yeah. I want you to do yours. Do you have one?
No,
what? I did. You don't even have one? Well, you're going to have a passion pitch, my friend.
Well, it is more of a passion pitch than an elevator
pitch. Okay, we'll do your passion pitch when that comes up. But So tell me your gut reaction there. So you and you meet me at a conference, and then I share this information with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't exactly sell it in your tone of voice.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because all the information is there,
right?
And if I'm that person that is I'm in the HR world, or I'm working with a large organization or even a small organization, and I'm going, this is the problem I'm looking to solve,
right?
And, Amy just nailed it. Amy basically just said what I've been thinking, what's been bothering me this whole time. How can we do this? And how can we be more effective in this? And so you just solved a problem for me. And so that's what I'm hearing in that pitch. So now I'm like, okay, I'll definitely have some follow-up questions then,
Right. And I think that if you are actually on the market in the moment for outplacement, you're at an HR conference, you've walked up to my booth because this is what we do, then this might be an excellent way to speak with you. However, you're rarely going to be in a situation where you come across people, even HR people for my business, even your ideal customer, like, hey, you know what I want is I want this problem solved for me today. Unless, especially the type of products and services that I'm pitching right now. People generally, even if they need outplacement, it's not something they want to be approached about. It's not something they want to talk about until they've engaged with you about it, right? So it's a huge hurdle to come over, and you need to think about with your business. Like, I have a friend who runs a business called Succession HR, and they do this. They have this amazing platform for succession planning. So that's an exciting topic. That's something that is a pain for organizations. They are solving that pain. So maybe he would have a better opportunity doing something like this. But I would argue that this is it's very hard to remember. And, you're told to memorize, and because we're going to talk about your background in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to memorize something like this.
Huge.
The other problem is, to my mind, it feels very transactional. It's like, I just want your business. I am not here to build a relationship with you. And I'm just going to talk about myself until I can't breathe. And then I might, and you'll get a chance to potentially run away. We just have to think about, I guess, what is the use case for our elevator pitch?
Mm-hmm. Well, Amy, I like that you brought that up, because I think about all of your experience working at going to conventions and conferences and events, and you have a booth.
Right. Yes.
And we've all been to conferences, and that's probably really hard to what you just said as an example, to get all that out as somebody is walking by, maybe on their way to lunch, or maybe they have their eye on another booth.
Yeah.
But I think I'm sure you have come up with some strategies that you've seen that, have evolved to how you can create that connection. Because to me, what an elevator pitch is really creating a connection where someone goes, tell me more.
Right. Exactly. You've got it. You've nailed it. It's that I want you to want to continue this conversation with me, but I'm not necessarily expecting to sell my service to you on the spot. That is almost never going to happen, that you're going to sell your service to someone on the spot at a conference at your booth. What you should have in mind, your call to action is, I want to have a next conversation with this person. I don't necessarily need it to even be about selling my product and service, or I want them to come to an event or a webinar that I'm hosting, not I want to sell to them. So if you have in your mind, I want to go to this conference and I want to build relationships. Again, I'll remind people, that's how you and I met, right? We were at a conference where you were speaking, and we built a relationship from there, which took,
that's right.
That was a few years ago now, right? But, we weren't walking around giving each other our elevator pitch, right?
No.
I don't think that would have gotten us very far.
No, because it really, I love the idea about that networking, or the whole idea is first build a relationship, build that trust with that person, create that connection, create that, your goal is, the words you want to hear from that next person is, tell me more.
Right. Or, hey, maybe we can reconnect. Or, I'd love to come to your webinar. Can I get more information about that? So I love the idea of turning this elevator pitch on its head and really going at it from the perspective of a passion pitch. And, that might not seem obvious to people, but it's like, what is something that you're passionate about? You started a business. It must have been something that for some reason interested you, or you had a unique expertise. And Joel, I want to talk for a minute about what you do, because I think your passion pitch, I almost think when you and I were meeting in person over lunch, you kind of unintentionally gave me your passion pitch about your business. And I was like, oh my goodness, I would if I were in a position to hire someone to help my employees in my organization, I would definitely be talking to Joel, because not only did your passion pitch convince me that you are an expert in the field, you really got me interested and saw how you're uniquely positioned to provide the services you provide. So why don't you tell all of us more about your what you do and
my
how
passion pitch.
Your passion pitch.
And then we'll come back to my original question, which was how did you figure how to connect with people when you're at these at these conferences?
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Well, I always say I start at the end, and then I'll go back to the beginning. But let me start at the end, which is where I am right now, which is 25 years of helping leaders and teams across the world, helping them be more impactful with their communication skills, to connect, to influence with authenticity, and really maintain that mutual respect. A lot of people say, how do I influence without authority? How do I move someone? Yeah. And the idea of move, and now I'm going to go back in time, the idea of move comes from the world of acting. And let me go back to 1996. when I'm a struggling actor and I have my 6.5 minute claim to fame on the X-Files. So,
right.
Celebrating, 30 years now ago that I did that. And then, like a lot of struggling actors, I started teaching acting. And then through that, business people started coming to the acting classes because they wanted to learn how to be more present, how to trust their instincts, how to be more persuasive and influential on the spot. I hear this from leaders all the time. I'm good when I have time to prepare. I struggle when I'm caught in a difficult conversation, or I have to present, or I get a difficult question. And so taking those skills from acting, which is the idea of move. How do I move the other person? Take the focus off yourself and put the focus on the other person. And when you do that, when you're focused on the other person about how can I move this person, what's important to them, what do they value, what motivates them, then we start to create connection. And it starts by being very present, which is one of the skills that came from acting. And I've done this with, many Fortune 500, like pretty much every Canadian bank and a lot of American banks as an example, and the healthcare industry. And I've had an opportunity to do this around the world. So really got to see different ways of people communicating. And then I bring that to whoever I'm working with. And really, just like an actor, I zone in in that moment.
Yes, and you're very good at that. You do really make people feel heard. You're a great conversationalist and a wonderful communicator. However, the challenge is you have 10 seconds to get someone's attention. You're at a booth at a conference, right?
That's right, yeah.
If you and I were working together and I was talking to you about, okay, Joel, I want you to interest me in like 10 to 30 seconds, capture my attention. I would say, oh, I'm kind of passing by you at a conference at your booth, and I'm kind of lingering and looking, and say, hey, you might see communication training in the background, and say, hey, funny story. I was an actor for about 20 years. I had my big break on X-Files. And like, now I'm like, oh, you were on X-Files? And then you're like, yeah. And funny, I thought that was going to be my big break, but I really ended up teaching acting, and then business people came. And so now you're already telling me, oh, hey, you're really interesting. You've got this great background to do. It ties so nicely with what you do. And I kind of am already like, I want to hear more. Because, hey, I can see as a business person going to an acting class, and I can see how business people would come. And then you've really created your whole backstory. I'm going to remember you, because you're not just somebody who decided, hey, I was in corporate and people told me I was a good communicator, therefore now I can teach this. I'm like, wow, this guy has a great resume for specifically the work he's doing. He saw the need and he filled that need. That is really cool. So that, I do think, if you were doing your passion pitch, because what you said was really interesting, but it's going to be too long to hold someone's attention if they're just meeting you, is like, hey, Joel, tell me more about yourself. Well, funny thing, I was an actor for 20 years. And then people will be like, oh, how did that go? Were you in anything that I know about? They might ask you a follow-up question to that.
For sure.
So going back to your original question, Joel, you asked me about at a booth, what do I do? Well, first of all, I hate having booths, but I force myself to do it. It's really, really hard to get people interested in you. And I was doing my elevator pitch, and that's how I know it doesn't work. But what did work? I started putting my book up on the booth, and it's got my name on it, and I've got a name tag, and people will sometimes make the connection, or they might pass by and say, oh, hey, what do you do? Or I'll kind of grab their attention and make like small talk until we start talking about what First 30 does. And they'll ask, like, how did you get started? And I'll say, oh, I actually wrote a book all about having a successful career in what I refer to as a reorg world where we're constantly losing and changing our jobs. And Joel, in the same way that you mentioned that, or that you were mentioning how you got started, and people can relate to having difficulty communicating and understanding that an actor might be able to help them. I was able to get people's attention by like, oh yeah, I have changed jobs every 2-3 years. Sometimes through a layoff, sometimes through, choice, right? And so they can relate to that immediately. And wow, you've written a book, or hey, I was thinking about writing a book too. And oh, well, how did that lead to what you do now then? And it's a door opener. Now we have a connection. Now, like you talked about, Joel, that movement, we're moving together instead of me trying to sit there and give you my pitch. And when you've done something, like you've acted for so many years or taught acting for so many years, I've written and researched this book, like you're invested in this subject. So people are like, ooh, I'm talking to an expert. I'm talking to someone whose opinion I can trust now.
You know, any way that you could start a conversation, that's, well, here, let me share with you an actor joke here.
Okay.
The actor joke is this, which is, that's enough about me, but what did you think of me in the last scene? That could also be a sales joke. Would be, that's enough about about my product. What do you think about my product? But that kind of reminds me of the book, because basically it's a way of subliminally still talking about what it is that you offer.
Right.
And what you're saying then is, you know, start in small pieces, which is start with, they see the book and allow them to be engaged in the conversation. So it doesn't become a pitch, but it organically comes out the information, versus the elevator pitch, which is just a dump of information. And the person goes, okay, well, that's interesting. Thank you. I'll find you on the web or something.
I'll give me your card. I'm not giving you mine. But you're so right about all of that. And we can't, you know, I always say with business, it's hard to do this, but you should have a give, get kind of attitude. Again, that's a topic we'll save for another day. But think about what is going to get people interested. So think about, like, why did you start the business that you started? What was your passion that made you go down that route? You know, think about what is my audience or my ideal client? What is their passion? What do they do with their lives? How do they spend their time? And so start putting yourself in the shoes of someone else. And then the other thing you want to think about is memorability, because it is very easy. We have memories like sieves, Joel, you know, and how many people do you meet at a conference? Really? Your call to action in your own mind? Just like, I want to stand out so people remember me, right? That could be, and I often will say to people, you know, wear a bold jacket at a conference, not something crazy, but for me, sometimes I'll wear like a bold color, like a blue, because that's our brand color, or a pink jacket or something. I don't go crazy with the whole outfit, but like people like, oh yeah, that Amy with the, you know, blue jacket at First 30, right? And I named First 30 because it was memorable. And easy to remember, right? When you have a business that has a name that's hard to remember, you're going to have to work harder with your branding and with your brand ambassadors. So, you know, those are like a number of different things, but really your call to action when you're at a conference is like, just get people to engage in conversation with you, stand out, be memorable, show that you're passionate about what you do without, you know, there's a line there, because sometimes we can start to be like superficially excited about something. So we want to really try hard to sound like we are, you know, we want to give the impression, or at least we hope it's genuine, that you want to really, truly engage with that other person. And I wish that we could have had a recording of us meeting when we met at a conference and subsequently met, because I feel like we were very good role models for this behavior. But in the meantime, we have helped each other with our businesses. You're here helping me. I mean, this is, you know, my hobby, but you're here helping me with it. And I've been, I've had opportunities to refer your business and your work, because I believe in what you do. Took a long time, but our first meeting was a great launching pad for the relationship that we've built over the years. That is, I hope, mutually beneficial.
Well, absolutely. What you're saying in all that is really interesting, because with the elevator pitch, it's often we get stuck with, what do you want people to know? And so we give this whole spiel. What you're talking about, like when we met, and how we create that connection is the second question we want to be asking ourselves. How do you want people to feel?
Oh, that's so good. Yes. Yeah.
And that's the reason why we connected so quickly when we met at the Disrupt conference, was because we both came from the same place, which is we want you were curious and I was curious. And so we felt safe and we felt engaged and we felt validated. Mm-hmm. And so when you want to connect with someone, have that thing that when they're walking away, it's not just they know about First 30, but also they know Amy really cares about her business, or Amy really cared about me, or Amy really listened to me. And that's the kind of person that I want to work with, because that's really what you want them to walk away with. Did I like that person? Do I want to work with them? Yeah. Like if I'm going to hire First 30, I'm going to be working with you basically. So I want to know that you're someone I want to work with.
Right. And we're going to have a relationship of some kind. And I always hope that the way that my clients feel when they're calling me, and it starts from the beginning, because at the beginning of the relationship should feel like this too. It's not like, oh, I have to call Amy, and it's not going to be.
Right. Yeah.
But I want them to feel like, oh, I get to call Amy today. And like, she's going to be helpful. And like, it's going to be a relationship. It's going to go back and forth, not just her trying to sell me more and more and more. And I should add that there is going to be a download to help you. So in the show notes, there will be a download to help our listeners to develop and some of the things you can think about to help develop your passion pitch.
Yes.
And Joel, the one other thing I wanted you to talk about before we move on and sort of close off today is I wanted you to talk about, I was in the audience even more recently for an amazing presentation you did, and you had such a great piece of advice that I loved. So I would love for you to share that today.
Yeah, well, it's going back to what you want people to know and what you want people to feel. It goes back to asking better questions, or as they called it in the speech, asking a friggin' better question. And this comes from, working with people and working with leaders, and I just see they ask these sort of checklist questions, or when we network, people just ask checklist questions like, where are you from? Montreal. Oh, where'd you go to school? I went to Concordia. That's in Montreal, eh? Yeah. And so the conversation is going to, and they're doing that because they're hoping they're going to get lucky, where maybe they're going to go, where you're from? I'm from Burlington. Oh, yeah, I'm from Burlington. But instead, it's because it's not really showing curiosity. So instead of asking questions about the facts of their life, ask questions about how they feel about their life. So a better question might be, what was the best thing about where you grew up, or what's the best thing about your neighborhood, or why did you choose to live there? What do you like about where you live, or what did you like about where you grew up, or what advice would you give to a college student instead of where'd you go to school? And when that happens, people start sharing their stories, and that's how you really create connection. Is that when there's a vulnerability that happens there, you'll probably find more similarities, but people will now feel that. And rightly so, that you were interested in them. You asked questions about their feelings, and you didn't ask questions about how do you feel about that, because that's therapy. Yeah. But we're asking questions about how they feel about how they felt about certain things, and now we're creating rapport on a much deeper level.
I absolutely loved that talk, and that really resonated with me. And we can get very lazy with our conversation, and it's easy to do, especially if you're tired and you're standing at a booth or you're at a conference. It can be really exhausting. But I do think, and you know what, I'm going to add what you said as well, to the download for our listeners. It will be in the show notes, because I think that it will really help them just to have primers. So before you go to a conference, we can do a whole episode on attending a conference and how to kind of quote unquote sell yourself at a conference. So we can talk about that on a future episode as well.
Absolutely. Well, then, Amy, I think we're at the part of our episode where we look forward to it. And Amy, here we go. What is our big sister bonus tip of the day?
Well, our big sister bonus tip of the day, and I have to say, Joel, I love that we've only done, this is our second episode, and we already have podcast traditions. But the big sister bonus is just because, a lot of people are going to tell you to do things certain ways with your business. And developing an elevator pitch and saying that to basically everyone you meet and memorizing it is going to be one of those things that along the way you're going to get. It doesn't mean you don't have to follow it. If it feels right to you, by all means, go ahead and take that advice. But don't do things that you do not feel good about. So if you're feeling far more comfortable with a passion pitch, try that on for size. If that doesn't work for you, try something else, but do what works for you and don't just listen to people because you think they're more established than you. Yes, they might be really great at what they do. They could also sadly be frauds like we see, and I use frauds pretty loosely. What I mean by that is they could be people who are positioning themselves as being far more successful than they are. And then you start taking their advice and it's flawed in the sense that you think that they're doing better than they are. And maybe these tips and tricks haven't really worked for them, but it's all they know. So they're telling you because they want to be perceived as successful. So I would just be very careful whose advice you follow, do your background work, and really learn about whether this is the right person to listen to. But more importantly, go with your gut and decide if that feels right for you and you're going to be comfortable speaking to people and giving them an elevator pitch, a passion pitch, whatever it is.
Big sister, that is such an important tip for entrepreneurs, especially with social media. You might see someone, look at that, they're so successful and all that, but we don't know the truth.
You don't know, right? You don't know. When you know, Joel, in 5 years, are they still doing what they were doing, or have they gone back and got a job in the corporate? And listen, there is nothing wrong with that. But what is wrong is if you're positioning yourself as being an expert in a field and like you own the world. And really a lot of what you have done has not worked for you.
I'll just add a personal thing to that. As someone who has worked where I've been worked with other facilitators, so we might go as a team, and I'll see someone else doing something, and I'll go, "Oh, I guess that's how I should be doing it." And then all of a sudden, I fall into this trap like an actor, which is trying to remember my lines versus trying to connect. And so that's the key is. I think what you're saying is the bonus tip is that your goal here is to create a connection. And if it works with your elevator pitch or if it works with your passion pitch, you have to do what feels, true and feels effective. And you could feel that you could repeat it. Like you could feel really comfortable and confident doing it.
That is such a great point. It has to be repeatable, right? Yes, absolutely. Joel, this was fun. I hope that our listeners got something out of it. And if you want, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always see us if you're on YouTube. But you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And please feel free to share it with a friend. Give us a great rating. And we shall see you next time. Have a great day.